So next up, one of our sponsors is the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Commission. So we always like to remember the oil spill and talk about that, and also the Prince William Sound Regional Citizen Advisory Council. So I'm happy to introduce Maia Draper-Reich, who's here to talk a little bit about our stewardship following the oil spill. Maia?
Hi, everyone. Let me get set here. My notes out in front of me. All right. Let's see. So yes, I am Maia Draper-Reich. I am the outreach coordinator for the Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council. My talk is titled An Era of Stewardship Following the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill. And we'll get into that. I have 20 minutes here to cover a lot of ground, so I'll be a little broad brush, but happy to answer questions or chat after as well. The Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council, or the Council, we've got a long name, so I'll call it the Council, is one of two such citizens oversight groups that were formed after the Exxon Valdez spill. Our nonprofit organization specifically was formed to represent the people in the region that was directly impacted by that disaster. The other organization is Cook Inlet RCAC, which has oversight over in the Cook Inlet region. Our group works to advise local industry companies, regulatory agencies, elected officials, and the public on issues of oil spill prevention and response. So, in my 20 minutes here, I will share a brief overview of the Exxon Valdez oil spill, familiar to many of you, but I know we have some students in the room, so make sure to dive into that a bit, and then also share about the community stewardship efforts accomplished in the region since then. I'm sure many of you are well aware that the Exxon Valdez oil spill and its aftermath shaped this region over the last 36 years since that event. We've already heard several references to it in a variety of presentations this morning. The reality is that oil tankers continue to ship oil from the Port of Valdez through Prince William Sound's waters, an average of 5 tankers-ish, that's an estimate, move through the sound each week. So this is a reality of this continued transport of oil through our beautiful, remote, culturally important environment here. So I hope from this presentation you gain an understanding that the Exxon Valdez disaster really instigated a wave of community involvement and stewardship that continues today. So just a reminder of the crude oil pipeline system we're talking about here. So the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System begins up in the Arctic at the oil fields on the North Slope in Prudhoe Bay and runs 810 miles down across the state, ending in Valdez, Alaska. There we go. This system has been shipping oil since 1977. So the pipeline comes in at the far side of this photo at the Valdez Marine Terminal, and that oil is stored for a short time in these storage tanks before being loaded onto ships. And our council's area of oversight focuses on the terminal and then the ships that carry the crude oil through Prince William Sound's waters. So the crude oil is loaded onto ships at the terminal, and then these tankers travel through Prince William Sound in the pictured red tanker lanes there over in the eastern part of the sound. And our council monitors the ships as they move in and out. Then once these ships leave Prince William Sound into the Gulf of Alaska, they travel down mostly to oil refineries in California, Washington, and Hawaii. Some do go over to Cook Inlet as well. Very occasionally, tankers travel over to Eastern Asia. And our council pays attention to the terminal and the tankers in the region with the purpose of preventing future marine oil spills, so ocean oil spills, right? And the question of why a community group, a citizens group exists to do that, of course, brings us to the Exxon Valdez disaster. So again, I'm sure many of you are familiar, but As a reminder, the Exxon Valdez oil spill was an enormous marine oil spill disaster that happened here in Prince William Sound in 1989. The spill is named for the ship, the Exxon Valdez, pictured here, which ran aground on a charted rock called Bly Reef, again over in eastern Prince William Sound. The ship is pictured here with boom around it in the days following the spill. As a result of that incident, at least 11 million gallons of crude oil spilled into this remote resource-rich environment, less than 30 miles from Valdez, very, very close to the community of Tititlik. And part of what made this disaster so widespread was the initial response was very slow and disorganized in a variety of ways. Everything from equipment under a winter's worth of snow. This was in March 1989. And if you've been to Valdez in March, there's a lot of snow on the ground. To it being unclear in the plans who was responsible for what and how things could get started. So the oil kind of sat in this general area of the spill for about 72 hours. And then, as happens in March, a storm blew in and started to blow that oil down the coastline over the coming weeks. So spilled oil damaged the shoreline from Bly Reef to Kodiak Island and beyond. As you can see here, the stats on the slide, as far as 470 miles away from the spill site is where oil washed up, and oil fouled approximately 1,300 miles of shoreline. Again, we have our glacial fjords and bays. If you stretch that out, 1,300 miles is approximately Seattle to LA on the West Coast. So the extent of this impacted region, and this image here explains why our council represents who we represent. We have board members not only from Prince William Sound communities, Valdez, Cordova, Whittier, Chenega, Tititlik, but also from communities on the Kenai coast and Lower Cook Inlet, as well as all of Kodiak Island is in our region. And we have board members representing specific stakeholder groups that were impacted as well. So fisheries, aquaculture, recreation, Alaska Native groups. Let's see, and while the tanker crew, of course, is to blame for this, there were also layers of complacency that led to the incident and how widespread it became. And the cleanup and the aftermath in many ways were mishandled by industry players at the time, resulting in long-lasting cultural, environmental, and societal impacts. So, for example, local citizens immediately wanted to help clean up, right? But there wasn't an organized way for that to happen quickly. Eventually, local boats, people, and resources were engaged to help in major cleanup efforts, which ran for the next several years. The cleanup also drew people from and supplies from around the world, right? This was very much a global incident, or an incident that got global attention. And after Exxon Valdez, fishing was closed for 2 full summer seasons here in Prince William Sound, which obviously is a huge loss for many. Beyond the environmental impacts, this event, of course, was hugely traumatic for all of the communities. Some people had lost their jobs and their livelihoods, while some were making money with spill contracts. So there was devastation amongst the communities. Public trust, namely with the industry, had been broken. There was definitely a lot of protests and activism at the time. It took decades for Exxon to pay settlement money. So really, it was a collective trauma for the environment and the people. And at that time, it was really recognized that the communities, the people, needed a voice. So even ahead of when the spill happened, there was sort of a little bit of effort to make a citizens group happen, but that accelerated, of course, following in the aftermath of this incident. So our council was actually incorporated at the end of 1989, December 1989. A couple months later, we signed our contract that's still in place with Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, so the industry company that manages the pipeline and the terminal. We have a contract with them that guarantees us funding, but also guarantees independence for our ability to do monitoring and research and oversight work. The creation of our council was also in anticipation of the Oil Pollution Act of 1990, which was passed just a year and a half after that, the initial spill, which created both our council and the Cook Inlet Council, and gives us more detail on our mandates of oil spill prevention and response and environmental monitoring work. So I'm going to breeze through quickly our council's work areas. There's a lot more I could tell you about details, projects. Please chat with me at the table on lunch or on the breaks if you'd like to know more. But I'll just move quickly through. So we do a lot of work on prevention at the terminal, which is been shipping oil since '77. It's an aging facility, so we have a variety of concerns and projects that we work on there. And then looking at prevention in terms of the ships. The ships are very different than the time of 1989. All of the tankers that come into Valdez are double-hulled tankers, so literal extra layer of production there. And then, as you can see in this picture, when they are laden, so filled with oil, they have 2 tugboats that travel with escorting each laden tanker all the way out until they're past Hitchenbrook entrance. So through the entire sound, if you can look really close on this picture, that tug off the stern is actually tethered. So that stern tug is tethered through the Valdez Narrows as well. We in Prince William Sound are now home as a result of this incident and the planning standards that were put in place after. Alyeska now has maybe the best in the world system of world-class purpose-built response barges and tugs that work with those, as well as an integrated system of local fishing vessels that work with that equipment and would implement an oil spill response. So this is a picture from a practice. You can see a couple of fishing vessels on either side of this large barge. There's another picture showing what that looks like. We, as a council, monitor and evaluate the trainings and drills that are done with both this sort of open water equipment that would be used in more open water parts of the sound, and the nearshore response work, which also involves local fishing vessels. So there's fishing vessels in 6 communities. So Whittier, Cordova, Valdez, Homer, Seward, and Kodiak all have vessels that train every year and are prepared and on contract to respond in an oil spill. So besides our council being a major way that community members are engaged in this industry and in prevention and response, this system of local fishing vessels across the region being ready and prepared is another way that their local knowledge of the waters of the sound would be put to use, as well as just those local resources of those people and vessels. So there, I'm sure, are some people in this room who are involved in that fishing vessel program. So we educate about this program. We also go out and observe annual trainings and drills that go on. Outside of prevention and response, we do quite a bit of independent weather science and environmental monitoring. So at the time of the spill, there was a lack of baseline data. We now have over 30 years of data measuring hydrocarbon levels in the waters, the sediments, and the mussels of this region, with a focus on Port Valdez out in front of the terminal, but we have data from across the entire region. So we can now measure when there is damage to the environment, if there is ever in the future. And we do a lot more other science that we accomplish and fund, so there's plenty more on that. My camp is outreach and communications. That's everything from our website and our reports and our newsletter, which you're welcome to check out at the table at the back, some of those, to educational events for a variety of audiences. We do a lot of work funding student programs, as well as I get to implement some student education. We have a few internships from time to time. So trying to continue to build awareness and educate about our work, but also engage the next generation of stewards as well. So while the environment has recovered in many, many ways, our monitoring data tells us that in the water that, the environment is very clean. There are, of course, beaches where you can find lingering oil. I know we're going to hear more about this later on. It is out there in the Sound and elsewhere in the region. Once crude oil is spilled, you can't get it all out of the environment. It's near impossible. So that is why we focus so much on prevention measures. And some of you may be familiar with this graphic from NOAA and the EVOS Trustee Council. Many, many animals have recovered in the 36 years since, but we do have some species that we know have not. Pacific herring is a big example. There used to be a commercial fishery for herring here that has not recovered. Pigeon guillemots, among other birds. So this era of stewardship over the last 36 years since the spill goes far beyond our council and all the work that we do. This disaster affected everyone's lives and work in countless ways. So on individual, organizational, community levels, change occurred, and a variety of modes of stewardship have been engaged ever since. You've already heard references, and I think you'll continue to hear references and connections to that event, to the spill, throughout the speakers today. The spill damage and cleanup really changed the environment, changed the wildlife, and the people and the communities here. It also changed the work, the science, the nonprofits, the industry, the regulation changed a lot, and the general stewardship efforts of our environment, wildlife, and culture here. So I encourage you to continue to draw those connections to the oil spill history as you hear people's stories and learn about all elements of the Sound today. And of course, I encourage you to continue to kind of share that as you share what you've learned beyond today. Please come chat with me, as I mentioned, at our table. This is, let me put that up there. There's our newsletter sign up. It's like 3 a year by email if you're curious to stay up to date with our work. And I'll just say that the safety of shipping oil in Prince William Sound is very different and way better than at the time of the Exxon Valdez spill. But there are always new concerns and room for improvement. And the council will be there to facilitate partnerships and work to keep crude oil out of the ocean environment. We have found great success in our balanced model where we're looking at industry, looking at regulators, and working to represent the community voices and make sure everything happens as safe as we can. And something we talk about often is complacency and combating complacency in industry, in regulation, in general safety. So I'll just say that the lesson learned from Exxon Valdez is that we continue to work under today is that those with the most to lose from oil pollution must have a voice in the decisions that can put their livelihoods, resources, and communities at risk. So if you'd like to know who your board members are, Mike Bender is our board member for Whittier. He's here today. But those of you in other communities or other stakeholder groups, if you'd like to know more about who represents you or more about the council, please chat with me or send me an email. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Maia will be around if you have questions for her. I was thinking about a poem, right, at 36 years from the spill, which was a very traumatic event for those of us involved in it. It was a really big deal. So I thought, 36 years in the spill, maybe it's time for a drill and something about birds. Just to, spark your like little cards, writing little cards, something like that. Still working on my little poem. But pretty amazing, 36 years.